Oh, I was getting a little nervous. I was like, did I click the wrong button? Good morning, everyone. Happy
I
New
know.
Year.
Now the numbers are coming in, Lauren. I know I was watching you watch the numbers. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome back, our lovely frequent flyers. Welcome our new people that I hope will become frequent flyers as well. I hope everybody had a restful, happy New Year. Hello, Emma. What would we do without our Emma? You know what, back? I think we need to get Emma back on.
Oh, that would be
That's what
awesome.
I think. Okay, Emma, I'm going to be tracing you down. We got it. We're just booking February. We need an Emma fix. And we can maybe get her to do the dance and song too, because that was
Oh,
just awesome and live.
yes.
Yeah. But we're glad to be back. Thanks for not forgetting about us during she'll rehearse. That was hilarious. Thanks for not forgetting about us during the holidays. I feel so much better. I was telling Lauren near the end of the year, I just felt like I was sinking in sand, in quicksand, I mean, and my eyes were like up to here, and I'm back and going, okay, the world is okay. I can come back out. I got some sleep. I was getting downright ornery near the end. I was so exhausted. So I'm glad to be back and awake. But we got a great show. So Lauren, I'm going to let you take it away and start us off.
All right, perfect. Lori, that was awesome because we are steady on numbers. So let me share my screen and I'm going to get you to confirm that you can see it. Okay.
I can.
All right, awesome. Get my buttons to work.
I know you're still up in that new technology you got going on there.
Oh my goodness, yes. All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining us today. So let me give you a little bit of a background as to who we are and what we're doing today. Again, Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, our services are at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. For the Los Angeles network, we serve the counties of Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura. And if you look at the screen in front of you, you can see where our center locations are. You'll see that we are located in Camarillo. We have a location in Santa Clarita, or near Santa Clarita. Over in Laverne and Pasadena, throughout LA, the South Bay, all the way down to Long Beach. And so the SBDC, or as an SBDC, we offer no-cost business advising. And so you are able to sit one-on-one with one of our business advisors or business experts. You might even get lucky enough to sit with our own guru of all numbers, Ms. Lori Williams. We have the experts, our colleagues, excuse me, are experts in the areas of marketing, tax and finance. We have business planning. If you are a handyman and looking to go into construction, we have someone specific for you. So again, we run the gamut when it comes to the types of experts we have on hand for you. And then we also offer virtual trainings, much like the training or the show you have joined today. So as you can see, we are here to help you. Please be sure to get in contact with us today. Let's get started. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232, or go online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us outside of our service area, so that means outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, or Ventura counties, please go to americassbdc.org/find-your-SBDC. So Lori, I'm going to stop my screen share really quickly and, oh, there I go. Stop my screen share. Quick housekeeping, Lori. For those who have questions, let's be sure we put those into the Q&A. Again, all questions into the Q&A. If you have any kind of comments or anything you want to share, you can put that into the chat. I'll be monitoring both. Lori will actually be taking a look at the Q&A. So again, let's keep our questions on topic and pop them in there. And then I know that, I didn't mention that the chat will also have links that Lori would like to share with you as well. With that, Lori, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Perfect. Now, Lauren, I didn't mention this before the show. I'm going to go through my stuff, but you know the website that we're allowing people, or not allowing, but we're having people sign up for information for the economic opportunity. Are you able to pull that up in a bit if I want to mention that?
I believe so.
Okay, then I'll go through mine and we'll come back to that. I should have mentioned that ahead of time, but I realized I
No
didn't.
worries.
I want to make sure I discuss that. Okay, guys,
Perfect.
got a few things before we get started. So this first slide I just added as a consideration. It's the first of the year and certain reports are due. I've already talked to some clients that didn't know where they need to file this by a certain date. So this isn't everything, but it's some things that I'm noticing that people are not aware of or missing. So first of all, if you have a seller's permit and you are collecting sales tax and you've been defined as an annual filer, which is most small companies have, remember you have to do a sales tax report January 31st. And please know that you have to file this report even if you had no sales. You can get a penalty for not filing the report. So head up on anybody who has sales tax and collected sales tax or has a seller's permit. Make sure you go to the website, and if you need any more information, you can reach out to Lauren and she'll get that to me and I'll send it to you. Now, if you have your company located in LA County, February 28th or possibly sooner, I think it's the 28th, it's usually right around then, you have to do the business license tax renewal. And if you don't do it by that deadline, you do not receive the 100,000 or below exemption and you'll have to pay tax. So make sure, once again, you get to the LA County Office of Finance and you fill out this renewal. Now, when it comes to required tax filing for LLC and S Corps, a lot of people say, well, I didn't do any transactions. I don't have to file any type of tax returns. May or may not be true. If you had 0 transactions and you have an LLC, it is true. But remember, transactions can be opening up a bank account, putting money in a bank account, taking and paying an expense. It's not just about sales. So most companies, if you formed an LLC, you may have at least 1 or 2 transactions paying for the fee for the LLC. And that means you do have to file a tax returns. If you're an S Corp or taxed like an S Corp, you must file a tax return no matter what. And the S Corp tax return is due in March. I'll be giving some of those dates in the next week. Now, if you have a company that you formed this year or last year, I should say, no, it's already the new year. I got to learn to say last year or even the year before, and you received the COVID exemption from the franchise tax fee, so you didn't have to pay the $800. Remember, you got to pay that $800 this year, and that's due by April 15th. So don't miss that deadline. So those are just some quick heads up. Once again, any questions, just send an email. Lauren will give your email. She'll make sure it gets to me. I can send links or whatever you need to know. Upcoming classes, I'm starting my financial literacy series. Lauren's going to put the links in chat, and then you'll be able to click on them and you'll get a full description. It's a very long description, so I didn't have room here, but I have session 1, session 2, and session 3. Session 2 and 3 is where I play with the Excel documents and I go over the cost structure and I tell you what is the minimum amount of financial data you must know to successfully run your company. That's session 2, and then session 3 I get into it a bit more. I'm also going to do the legal structure for your company. What's the best legal structure and what are my tax advantages? I'm going to run that. That's through the Pasadena SBDC. And I held it last year and it had a lot of people signing up. And it was based on the confusion that people have about sole props versus LLCs versus S Corps and the tax advantages and non-tax advantages. So I really just a generic class going through and combating some of these things that are not true that people believe to be true or they Google and they hear. Now, upcoming shows next week, we got Bridget, and she's from BESA Programs. She is going to talk about developing a sustainable business model. Then we have Keith Rogers coming on from the ACT team. That's the Access to Capital team, part of the SBDC. He's going to talk about financing options. And then Simara, who she was on the show, I think it was in November, and we had so many questions, we didn't even get to them all. So I wanted to invite her back on. She's going to come on and talk about California employee laws. And one of our listeners in December sent some information about a new law that's coming into play and asked for additional information. Simara will be going over several of the new laws because California has many that are starting or started January 1st that you'll want to know about. So that's my announcements, except for one. I want to go back to Lauren for a second to share her screen. Last year, we began to discuss the, I hope I got it right, Lauren, economic opportunity grants. Did I get the right name? It's been a vacation. I have to make sure I got the right name, right? So we still don't have a lot of information about it. But what we do have is a website that you can sign up to get information. So that way, you know, you're staying up to date on it. And this is what the website looks like. Lauren is going to put it into the chat. There's going to be many grants available. I'll have more information. And as I love to say, you will hear it first. I'm once again involved in it. Lauren's highly involved in it. But at least if you sign up for this website, you're going to get pertinent information when it starts, etc. So Lauren, thank you for giving everybody a visual of what that looks like and putting it into the chat. Appreciate that. So with that, no further ado, I'd like to talk about today's show. So PlayLab, it's an indoor play space for young kids ages 0 to 4. Jason and his wife, Carrie, decided to open the company when they were looking for a play space for their 18-month-old daughter, and they found out that there was nothing designed for kids of that age. So they took the big leap, and I'm just going to leave the story right there at the big leap because Jason is going to fill us in on everything. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hi, Lori. How's it going?
It's so good to see you. I met Jason, you know, we were trying to remember, we think it's back in 2019, we did a success story for him at the SBDC, and I interviewed Jason many years ago, but so much has happened. But let me not get ahead of myself. So Jason, I mentioned that you started it, but I didn't say when you started it and how long you've been at this game. So take us back when you started it, the leap, how it came about, and how it felt, if you can remember that long ago when you jumped in.
Well, it's 2017 when we began doing this. We opened our first location back in May 2017. And like you said, it was after we had our first daughter, who was 18 months old at the time. We'd take her to play spaces, and I'd be nothing for her age range. It was always for older kids, or if it was a space for a younger kid, it would just be like, not really well done. So my wife wasn't really a child education major, and she decided, like, let's make her own thing. She had just like gotten fired from her old job, so we're trying to find some work that she could do that would let us still be active, involved parents. So we're like, well, we could make a play space, and then we can take our kid to the play space, and she could work while we work, or she could play while we work. And that never worked out, but we did make our own space, and that was a very fast decision. I think we had the idea like February or March of 2017, and we opened by May. It was really quick, and we just kind of flew by the seat of our pants, talked to SBDC.
You had no background. You'd not had other companies or anything. You'd not been, I don't remember of asking, had you been a company owner before with anything else?
I had an online bookstore. So that was that was my experience. I did it for about, let's see, 7 years at that point. So I had some idea about basic financial things and negotiating a little bit, but selling books is so different from, you know, hosting kids in a play space. It was very different.
Yeah, especially online versus having a retail space or a brick and mortar space. Now you've got a much higher level of commitment.
Very much, yeah. It was quite a change. Also, you know, but a lot of the skills that I got from that did apply. Just a lot of things from my past did work into the play space. Like, I was a film student in another life, like 20 years ago, tried to be a filmmaker. And a lot of that really played into running a business, like putting together like a crew, a set, like having a budget, having to think of all these details about what can go wrong, and planning for that. So those skills really did help me with this endeavor. So it was kind of a weird way that it all played into the current business.
Then you went some time before you opened a second location. Let's talk about, kind of the what happened when you got started, but then you took off enough to get a second location. So fill in that space for us.
Yeah, so it was a quick success. I think it was quiet at first. We're like, oh my God, what have we done? There's like 2 people showing up all day. Like, are we gonna like just lose all of our money? And I thought at the time, like, look, like rent isn't that expensive for this place. It was like $2.5 grand, I think, per month. So it was a total steal for LA. So I was like, well, if it's a total failure, I mean, we'll eat $2,500 or $25,000 of rent, and then we can, close it up or something. So my wife was running the space like every day when she was there, like working open to close. Um, and then around June, like a month into it, it really caught on. Like word of mouth was starting to catch on. So people were showing up, booking parties, and July was busy. It was great. I mean, it was summertime too, so that definitely helped the timing of it. We got our first employees around that time, and I began thinking like, okay, what if we made some more of these locations? If we can make a little network of PlayLabs, that'd be fantastic. So I always had the idea pretty early on to do more than one location to see if we could build this up and keep growing it. And so after the first year, we started looking at, expanding another location, where to do it, how to do it. And I talked to SBDC a lot, talked to Don Lowell. I read that book, E-Myth Revisited, about how to design your company. So that's a thing you can like copy and paste, like a template of how to run your business to make it like a little machine and not make yourself just, not give yourself a job, but, replicate it to expand it. So that was a really big part of my thinking when it came to growing it. And so we looked for spaces in 2019, a lot of just a good place to go that would be inexpensive. By that time, we knew things like looking out for bad landlords, bad neighbors, like triple net leases that have like crazy expenses. So we wanted to really avoid some of the problems that we made with the first one. There weren't a whole lot, honestly. We got really lucky with our location and our landlord. But I knew that stuff like that could be like very hard if you picked a bad building, like bad location with like a bad deal that could really torpedo things. And I talked to places that had like 5 or 10 grand rents per month. And I'm like, yeah, I just couldn't swing that. So I knew we couldn't afford those sorts of things. So we finally found a really good place in Eagle Rock, which is just far enough from our current place to open the second location. And we decided to make like half indoor, half outdoor, which ended up being a really good thing with COVID later. That was really like total, like just a bit of luck. So we signed a lease, I think September, and then spent 2 months building it out. It was like about 2 months before we opened the second location up, which was November 2019. So we got an employee or two to kind of fill out our staff to cover both locations. And then of course, as you know, COVID hits like 2 months later.
Yeah. And, you said some great gems, and I'm going to walk back a little bit on them so our audience kind of can understand some of the things because they were golden. So there was 3, and so I'm making sure that I remember them. One of them, and I see a lot of people not making this the best decision. You mentioned immediately we saw a lot of rent that was 5 and 10,000, and we couldn't afford that, and we knew better not to get into it.
Right.
And I see, Jason, a lot of small businesses buy their rent, lease their rent like they buy a house. They fall in love with the house and they kind of forget that you have to afford the house. And
Yeah.
during COVID, we have so many companies that are severely hurting financially only because of the rent, and the rent never really was appropriate for them. And now it's completely inappropriate. And I want to attach on to that comment before you comment back, the triple net. That is a nightmare, but a lot of people in our audience don't know what the words triple net mean. And
Right.
I don't want you to have to be an expert and explain it, but can you just mention it a bit so they know what the damage is of a triple net financially if you're not aware of it?
I barely know myself. I'll do my best to explain it. But triple net, it means that the person leasing the space would be responsible for a portion of the taxes of the building, like the annual taxes, like the real estate taxes,
and the maintenance and stuff.
Yeah, it's upkeep. But it's like, I mean, whenever I look at a lease with the landlord, I'm like, okay, here's what you're asking per square foot, whatever. But like, you have triple net. How much is that actually going to be at the end of the month? How much am I actually going to pay you? What's triple net mean in this circumstance? Because everyone's different. And one thing I learned from my bookstore experience was that there's no typical commercial lease. There's like residential stuff. It's like, it can be boilerplate. There's laws to protect you. There's tenancy laws and things like that. Commercial real estate, there's nothing like that. So really had to read the lease really carefully and know what the deal was that you're getting into. So you don't have to pay like some hidden fee that you don't know about.
And that's the problem that comes in, because it's maintenance, it's the shared common areas, and many people, they sign the lease not knowing what it means, and they get a bill at the end of the year or the end of the lease, and it can be a high bill, and you're suddenly shocked. So triple net. And Jason, you're so correct on this. HVAC, you may have to, if the air conditioner goes out, you could be responsible for repairing it or changing it out. So the commercial leases are an animal within itself. Now, one of our JP in our audience, he wants to know the name of the book. It was E-Myth, right?
Oh,
I remember reading it, but I don't remember the author. Do you?
I don't, but
I
it'll.
don't at all. But E-Myth, I know if you Google E-Myth, you'll come up with the book. I still have it in my library, but I don't remember the author. But yeah, that was a great book. And so with with your decision on really financially identifying the right amount of rent, and then also knowing that you needed to read the lease, I just wanted to stop you there because those were such great gems for you to cover. So the other question before we go into where COVID is, and this is, I'm making an assumption, Jason, you correct me if I'm incorrect. I'm assuming that with the space and the business, the two challenges were probably dealing with employee law. I'm not talking about the person employee, but the employees and the laws and all that stuff, right? And the other thing was keeping the space occupied enough. Otherwise, if you have nobody visiting, you have you got a liability versus an asset. And you mentioned that you also had parties. So I was wondering if we could just kind of talk to how if you felt as though, employees, HR, managing employees, and keeping the space always as an asset and not a liability were the two challenges. And if so, how did you deal with them, or any other challenges that you saw were major?
Employees were difficult in terms of finding good people, retaining good people. That's something we still struggle with. I think it's like, from what I've learned, that never goes away. No matter how big you get, it seems like it's always a challenge to hire and find and retain good people. I was thinking the other day about people we've had. It's probably about 25 people in our history that we've hired. And I was like reflecting, like, how many of those were like really good hires and how many of those were like awful. Like there's a few train wrecks, to be honest, and there were some great ones. Before the pandemic, we had a really good staff that had really gelled. They liked each other. They got along well. They were like, it's a cliche, but the little family thing like that. They really were great together. And it was a shame that COVID had to wreck that. And it was just one of those things, man, that was a great little team we had, little band of people. Yeah, but we did learn some lessons on the way. Like there was one thing I learned about, it was interesting. It's a cool idea. It was some kind of program that would sponsor employees who are trying to rehabilitate their careers or their resumes, but they would sponsor the employee. SBDC told me about this one actually, Lori. So it was something I'd heard about. But the deal was that this agency would sponsor an employee for the first 4 months entirely, like a full-time employee. And then the second 4 months, they would pay like half of it, like 60%, something like that. And then after the 8-month period, you would take them on and pay fully for their wages. It was nice. We tried one person out, and she honestly wasn't that great. It was there was just a lot of issues with some of those people who were like struggling, to be honest, like with mental times or homelessness or other things. It just didn't, the judgment wasn't quite there, honestly, for some of the people. And honestly, when I interview people on the phone about it, I'd ask them like, oh, your resume says QuickBooks. What's your experience with QuickBooks? I'm like, QuickBooks, what's that? I'm like, it's on your resume. And they're like, oh, QuickBooks is. I'm like, who wrote this? Like, it was weird. So I learned you really had to pay for good people in the end. Like you really have to just pay for those people and don't expect to find them for free or cheap. So.
Okay, Lauren, you got to put that in the chat, man, because I say that all. You really got to pay for good people. There's an old business statement. I don't know. I'm probably learned it in business school. I heard it. I don't know, but it says your greatest asset and your greatest liability is walking the shop floor. It goes back when we were more manufacturers, right? But it's very true. And I always tell people, because in my private business, I help people hire a lot, not from an HR, just trying to make sure they didn't financially financially make a decision and bad decision in interviewing them. And, you know, as a small company, because you then got to engage in the hiring, it's very costly to make a bad business decision on hiring somebody. If it's a big company, they can kind of blend in and cause little tears and stuff. But when it's a small business with only a few people, one rotten apple, you've got a friggin' nightmare and a setback. So those are great lessons that to share with us. Absolutely great lessons. Now, you gave us a little preview because you mentioned that you had your little family and then COVID wrecked it. So you gave us a little preview that COVID did some harm. So I'm just going to say, tell us the story, Jason.
Well, my joke was always that the worst business to be in was a children's play space as a social space for a global pandemic. Like, I always thought when we started out, like, what could ruin this? What are our threats to this business? Like, what could, given our, I mean, besides our incompetence or mistakes, whatever, like, what external threats could we, you know, face that could really put us out of business? And I never thought global pandemic would be one of those things. Like, I never that would be like, I thought, you know, the rent would, landlord like take the, you know, cancel the lease or raise the rent or something, but no, global pandemic. So go figure. So when that happened, our community was very cautious. Like, I mean, it's, you know, little children's families, like it's parents who are very protective of their kids. They're very hands-on. So when COVID began to become a thing, like we saw attendance drop very quickly. And it just became clear that was going to be a big concern. And I remember like really, when it really hit home was, I think it was like one day in late February, early March, when it was like pouring rain outside. And usually that had been like a super busy day for us. People would be like lining out the door to come in and play, just to have some place to go. And like 2 people came in. I was like, oh, this is really bad. This is serious. If they're not coming in today, when this should be like $1,000 day or something, this is going to be a big problem. I didn't know how big a problem it's going to be for how long. Like, I mean, I guess no one really did. My wife thought this will be a few months, and I was like, a few months? That seems really long to me. But she was both right and wrong. It was far longer than that. So we had to be closed down by state orders, by local orders. We couldn't operate. Even if we could have, like our customers weren't going to come in. Like it was just not going to happen. So we kind of hibernated for, I mean, most of the year, honestly. I think we opened up December for a little bit. And we did a version of our old business. We used to do open play, which just means public hours. They come in, they play from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. We do parties on weekends a lot. But after that, we had to watch our capacity and just our appetite, our customers' appetite for visiting. So we offered like private play space dates where they could just rent the entire space out for a small group and have it all to themselves. And we'd be there with our masks and gloves on behind plexiglass and wash toys and rinse stuff. And they could book it for an hour to 2, something like that. And it helped a little bit. It wasn't very popular. I mean, the price point was too high, but we had to have it that price to be profitable. It wasn't, there's no sense to go in and work at a loss. I didn't see any point in doing that. So we did that for a bit. And then when things got, better, when vaccines began rolling out, people began feeling more comfortable about returning. And so we did have more open play, and it still isn't really that attractive to people, I think. Parties have done really well, like, which I didn't expect that to be like the thing that would work now, but open play has been really quiet, but parties have just been filling our calendar, which is fantastic.
That's interesting. I mean, we're both guessing here, but any psychological belief on why parties, because they already know the people, they feel a sense of security, you think?
That's my hunch, and that they just have been repressed from having a celebration. Maybe we're also outside, and it's a safe, contained environment that versus going to a park where who knows what you're going to experience. Like you can't control it or contain the group. So I think it's that familiarity of just I know who's here. I trust them. I trust they're safe. And some people just don't care about COVID. I mean, still, they just like at the height of it, we would require vaccinations. We'd require masks to be worn by everyone over the age of 2. So we always err on the side of safety and caution. We always had that as a big priority when it comes to health and safety. So we're kind of like the last people, I think, in our industry, local industry, to stop requiring those things. But again, we have like a younger clientele. We have maybe a more vulnerable population of like the younger, under 4. So, we did it for a while, and then we took polls. We talked to our customers like, hey, what are you comfortable with? What do you want us to do? Like, are you cool with no mask, no vaccination requirements at this point? And a few people were wanting to do it, but I mean, they hadn't come in ages. So I'm like, they're not going to come in, that's not going to change their, habit or turn them into customers or something. So
yeah, well, you've done well just hanging in there. We had another guest, Michelle Davis, on the show some time ago. It's been probably a year ago. And I worked with her to help her close down her Playcenter because she just couldn't do it. The rent was higher and she didn't have anybody coming in, ran out of the, government loans. And it just was a good decision to make. Now, she had another business interest that she pursued, which was web design and stuff and social media. And that took off for her. So it's turned into a happy story, but it was, she tried very hard to hold on. And I have a couple other clients that were in that same space, a little different, but same space. So just a shout out to you, Jason, just that you're hanging in there. You're doing better than everyone that I have personally seen.
Yeah, a lot of places in my, our competitors closed. A lot of them closed down during the pandemic, and even we had to lose one of our locations, which was super painful to do. Our original location, we had to close that down, which was like, I mean, I say traumatic, and I don't want to minimize anyone else's real trauma, like who lost people or got sick or whatever, but it was really horrible to have to go clean that space out, empty it out, and vacate it. It was just like our home for, almost, we gave it back in 2021. So it was 4 years of us living there and, launching our space. So it was really awful to have to go in there and like take down fixtures that I remember like putting up in 2017. It was like, oh, I remember when I put this up, or when we painted this wall or whatever. It was weird to walk around and have all those memories just popping out as you took it apart. So it was horrible. It was a decision that we talked about for a long time of like, can we afford this place anymore? Or is this just going to be, a bad decision that's going to cripple the company as a whole if we don't get rid of this one place that we can't use for who knows how much longer.
No, I appreciate you speaking of it, Jason, because I know I can guarantee there are people in our audience right now, just because of the number that are here and me being with the SBDC and consulting with so many people on a weekly basis. My common conversations every week are something like this. Do I need to shut down? Do I need to let go? I'm very emotional about it. It's extremely hard. So you are actually talking about something that so many people are experiencing right now. I appreciate your honesty on it. Any words that you can share with people on just how you and your wife manage to get through the decision, how you manage to stay whole as a person and not let it take you down too, Jason?
It was hard. It was really difficult. It was an awful experience going. I did a lot of it myself, like having to go in there and just like take it apart just bit by bit. So my wife was with the kids watching them while I would go in and like work and take apart things. So it was, probably a month-long process just to get it all out. What can I remember about that? I remember it was just kind of a finance thing for a part of it. It's like, well, it's going to cost this much and back rent we'll have to pay off. And our landlord, we had 2 landlords, of course, at the time. We had, the 2 locations, 2 landlords. Both were just independent people, like not corporations or like a corporate, landlord, whatever. So we could like talk to them pretty easily about, making a deal or communicating like, hey, this pandemic thing, we were able to suspend rent for a while because Pasadena had a moratorium on rent for commercial and residential renters. So we invoked that. We're like, well, we don't have any money coming in. We got SBDC, we got SBA loans and some other funds to help us. But I was like, I don't want to spend those on rent if I don't have to. I don't want to I want to pay something, but I want to be careful with our money and not jeopardize our business with like a bad decision. Because it was, who knows at that point what was in store. So the landlord at our Eagle Rock place, which was our second location, was pretty accommodating. She was like, okay, pay me what you can when you can. And we did, we we held off for a few months and we'd pay her what we could. The other guy, same thing, but we had signed a new lease with him at the first location right before the pandemic began to renew our lease. So, and that was the question too. I'm like, ooh, should I do this or should we not renew it? And in the end, we decided to renew it. We're like, well, let's renew it so we can have the space. But he was kind of, pressuring us to pay some rent or pay off the back rent. And I was like, look, can we make a deal? Can we like make a bargain of some sort? Like, I can't pay the whole amount. We have no money coming in, of course. I can't, I was like, hey, you cut us a break. And in the end, we did actually make a settlement. Like I was able to find like a pro bono lawyer to help me like write a settlement to get out of there and just pay like a fraction of the rent. So it ended up being like not too financially hard on us to do that. I mean, it's more the emotional thing, like having to like say goodbye to the space, which we did, or like we walked in and when the employees came by at that January, like pick up their W-2s, like, hey, let's go in. You want to see the space, how it looks? And we all kind of toured like, oh, bye Pasadena. And we kind of had a little goodbye to the building, which sounds hokey, I'm sure, but it did help in a way. Like it really did help process the end of that.
Well, grieving is grieving and it needs a process. It does. I mean, I can think about all the different things in my business and stuff over the years, and it does. I'm glad I asked you the question because you said some wonderful gems again. And with the one, it's a slang thing, but I love what you said. It's a financial thing. And Lauren, put that in the chat because the thing is, I tell people, and I'm not the cold finance, everything's about finance, but I'm sorry, everything's about finance, right? There is the emotional aspect. I don't, as you can see, I don't ignore that whatsoever, but at the end of the day, it either has to pencil out financially or not, or your emotions are going to be so much worse off if you don't face it. But the other thing, I love the story that you told, and I work with a lot of people that are in situations with their landlord and they're hiding out and avoiding them. And I say, no, you got to get into a discussion. If they're hard-nosed, you got to send an official letter certified, and you may want to get a lawyer of some sort to help you iron out an agreement, because it's not so much often in the negotiation about, I really want to pay you. It's, I don't have the money. It ain't going to happen. If we don't make a deal, nothing's going down. We're both losing. Let's talk about the money.
And that was the discussion. I remember like talking to him about, it's like, look, we can make a deal or you can try to like sue me for the full amount in small claims court. I don't want to go that route, and he would do a few things too. Like I'm not sure if it was a bluff or he just didn't know, but he tried to like, when the moratorium was ending or something, he tried to be like, oh, I can evict you now. I'm like, no, actually you can't. Like, you can't legally do that yet. So I was like, he might try something. So time to talk to a lawyer to make sure I know I thought I knew the law, to make sure I understood what the law was about this. Like I called like the assemblyman at Pasadena, like the city council, whatever, to be like, hey, there's this ordinance. Am I interpreting this right? They're like, yeah, you got it. I'm like, great. So then I got the lawyer to be like, yeah, you know what's up, like you can't do what he's threatening to do. I'm like, great. So that kind of put me at ease. I'm like, okay, he's trying to bluster or bluff or whatever, and I'll just be like, look, if you want us to go, we can make a deal, but I can't pay the full amount, so let's talk about it from that point of view. And eventually
another great gem you just said. Somebody you called, you learned what the ordinance was, you learned your rights. Because I have to say, and I tell people this all the time, having been in private business for 30 years in banking, investment banking, a CFO, I've played the game. And I can tell you there was times that I walked in and said, sue us, just go ahead. We don't care. We're walking out the door. And I bluffed, I bluffed a lot, and I knew, and it was getting to a negotiation. So unfortunately, the truth is, in business, a lot of times it is like two opponents and you're trying to get a situation that works for both, but both people are playing their sides until they finally get to the middle. And that is the kind of game that small companies that never dreamed in their life they'd be facing and being in those kind of games, because they're prevalent in the bigger size companies, as you guys can probably imagine in the audience. And so I was used to them in the bigger size companies. Not that I liked them, but I was used to them. So you have a lot of small individuals, small companies that never been exposed to this. And so a landlord says, I'm going to sue you, and they're trying to take out their 401 and write a check. And I'm like, no, tell them, sue them. There's not much you can do about it. So this was a great conversation. conversation to have. We're not giving legal advice here. We're just opening your mind to getting additional resources and having discussions.
Yeah, and it helped. It helped when the lawyer helped me draft this response. Is very careful. We had to like really think about like, should I tell him I have a lawyer, or will he do a lawyer? Will he get a lawyer himself, and like will it escalate? And it didn't. But there was some question of like, we can present like, hey, like if you demand the full amount, you can take me to court eventually, and once this all shakes out, I'll probably be bankrupt. So do you want something or nothing, or do you want something? You want the full amount maybe years from now, or something now, or nothing never. So it helped. I think it spoke to him finally. He kind of came to his senses, and agreed to settle. So it was great.
You said perfect words. They're the exact kind of words that I've mimicked in that situation. So with your cleverness, your financial prudence, you're making the hard decisions, you're getting the ordinance and everything. Jason, you had to close one, but you made it to the other side. And let's talk about right now. You're hanging in there and you're starting to see business again. Give us kind of where you're at with your one location.
Yeah. Like I said, open play has not rebounded. We tried to offer that more in October and some in November, just a little trial, see how it went. People had the appetite for it, and it didn't really work out. I mean, it was, I hired a person to come in and, join us for, hopefully I'd make her like a full-time person to work like Monday through Friday, and we could do open play and it would work out. And it just didn't. Like after a month, I looked at the numbers and I'm like, it's just, we're losing a bit of money, not a whole lot, but it wasn't profitable. So it's like, again, justify this decision forever. And parties, kept doing great. People would book parties sight unseen. They see the space online and book a party there, and then they'd come and tour it like, later, which was, I mean, flattering and kind of crazy in my mind. Of like, wow, they like it, and just, but I mean, we booked things like February, March, April dates already. So it's, a few months down the line, people are making reservations, calling me every day about availability and, what we can do for them in terms of decoration and custom things. And all of our parties are really custom to whatever the client wants. A lot of places, when we looked at this business originally, we look at other places, how they do stuff, how they, things they do well, things they don't do well. A lot of places did 2 hours, and they did really very structured things. It's like, you have to buy pizzas from us, or use our caterers, or you can't do decorations. So we're like, let's just do it all out. Like, if you want to do whatever, you can do it. You can bring in your own food. You can bring your own decorations. We'll help you set it up. If you want us to do decorations, we'll do that for you. It's very like a concierge party thing. We're very, accommodating. So that's gone really well. We had December was almost entirely booked every weekend full of parties, except for like Christmas weekend and New Year's Day. So it was just packed. So
That's
that was
good. Now, before I go into a question, I want to say, Lauren, make sure that we get Jason's information into the chat. And you guys in the audience, you want to have a private party, he's open for private parties. You get to BYO balloons, BYO how you want to do it. I mean, it actually makes sense to me, Jason, because I don't have kids and I don't have the experience, but I would think when you go to Chunky Cheese's, you've got a event with a bunch of other people there. You have to fit within that regime of dietary that maybe not everybody wants, where you're giving them this fun space where kids can be happy and comfortable, but they get to kind of design it like it's in their own home.
Someone brought like a horse in, like they had a horse walker on the deck. I didn't see that party. I wish I had. I mean, people had done like kinds of stuff. We had someone did like a pig roast once. We had like a karaoke night. One of my favorites was recently a 1-year-old's birthday party. I think in November, they booked like 6 hours of time, which is like twice as much as the usual party. But they want to have like the kids party at first in the afternoon. Then they want to send the kids home and have like adult karaoke afterwards, just to kind of hang out and drink and, sing songs on the deck. So I'm like, whatever you want to do, sure, let's do karaoke. Great. Like, you got it. So it's fun. Every party is different. They're a little stressful, but again, like, it's kind of that filmmaking experience of like putting all the elements together and making sure things don't go wrong, and just thinking of all the little needs that they might need. It's like, I did a party recently and I just watched them and see what they might need. So they're like looking around for like a candle, like, oh, here's a candle, here you go. You need a light, here you go. And like, oh, you need a cake cutter, there you go. So you just watch them, and you solve little problems that come up and make sure they're covered. So you're there to support them as the party goes along. So that's kind of how we tend to do this. And
I think this is a great referral too, because you got an entire group having fun, seeing how well and supportive the space and the owners of the space is to their party. It's got to lead to referrals, and maybe that's helping your booking.
It does sometimes. I don't know if you see a lot of people parties booked by former guests. One thing we did early on, we tried to do this, is one of our experiments was we would give each kid a free pass to come back. Every guest of a party, like a free day pass to return, whenever they want. And we didn't see much redemption. I don't know. It just never seemed to really be an enticing promotional tool. I'm not sure why, but we would, track it. We would, record all the ones we'd given out and track, if they ever redeemed it. And most of them never did. So I don't know. It's weird, but like they just kind of come organically. The people search for us online and they see our Yelp gallery or something, and they're like, "Yep, I'll try that place out." And they book just from online searches a lot of the time. So
I think it's interesting, and I know you and I recently briefly talked about the parties really taking off, and perhaps that might be your new way of being in business, your business model, or at least the majority of it. And so if parties became what it was that the company was all about, would that support you financially and in other ways? Do you think that could end up being the net positive of COVID, the new direction?
I don't, it's something I thought a lot about. And, part of my dream still remains to build more PlayLabs, to have like a little network of locations. And I've thought about how I would do that if it was just a party spot. When it was open play Monday through Friday, it worked out pretty well. We had a solid business, solid people coming in. And I always felt that would be something that could be replicable. You could like copy and paste that to the location. You could have open play and then parties here and there. But it was probably about 40% open play sales, 60% parties back in the day. Maybe it's half and half. I don't know. But now with it being so party heavy, I don't know if it'd be easy to replicate more locations or how you copy. I couldn't be in two places at once, for example. So I need more staff, of course, to run more parties. If we had like a second place that was doing, if it was busy on weekends as well. So we did really well in December for parties financially, which is great. So yeah, you could make enough doing that with one location if you're conscious of costs and you had enough bookings that could work out. So I don't know. I keep thinking about like how much I tried to make open play work and how it just was kind of rejected by our community. They're like, well, that's nice, but we don't do parties. And I kind of felt like you had a restaurant and say you had a hamburger stand. I also sold pizzas. And I was like, this is Jason's hamburger stand, but everyone wants to buy pizzas. After all, I'm like, well, I guess you want pizzas, no more hamburgers, and I'll follow the customer demand. It feels a little bit of that way with parties in a way. So
Well, the Wrigley's gum story, right? I mean, most people do. I talked to somebody the other day and they didn't. So Wrigley's gum was actually a piece of gum that was put in the package when they were selling soap, if I remember the story correctly. And they kept trying to sell the soap, kept trying to sell the soap. Nobody wanted to buy the soap, but they kept saying, can we have that piece of gum instead of the soap? So it originally was just this additive to the soap to get people to, just an extra benefit. And if they just continued to sell soap, Wrigley's gum would never exist. So I'm applying the Wrigley's gum story to you right now, Jason.
Well, in like Slack, the chat service, the chat software was from like a video game company that just needed like an internal communication system to talk with people, and the game failed, but the communication system took off, and they're like, wow, this is the product. So I mean, I just don't know if I could. I mean, one thing I did when parties are busy or more involved was try to like find third party event coordinators, event planners to stuff too, and give them like, hey, like give me a little finder's fee for sending you some business. And that'd be a way I could potentially leverage more work than I could handle to third parties and still have them like execute things as good as we were before. So I have thought about that and made a few deals with people who do great parties that we've used in the past and can deliver awesome results. So that might be one way of growing it and expanding things. So we'll see.
Well, and one of the things I was talking about actually during COVID, when a lot of business owners were looking at their financials and talking about, well, when the government restrictions, whatever they may be, are gone, then I will have the sales. And even back then I said, well, yes, the government restrictions may be gone, but it's the consumer behavior that you are not aware of. And we never had an experience to predict, right? So it's really now a consumer behavior question for so many companies, and I'm seeing it across board. Even hairstylists and stuff, some hairstylists decided to work out of their home, thinking now they're going to go back in space. People want to go into their home. They feel very comfortable doing that, and it's convenient. So I think for both service as well as some products, the consumer is now saying, no, we don't want that. We want this. We don't want to know what tomorrow will bring. But I think there's always this match between what a customer wants and what's financially feasible and makes sense. Because if you sell something they want, but you can't be profitable, you lose. You sell something they don't want and they don't buy it, you're not profitable, you lose. Again, you got to be profitable somehow,
Yeah, we did actually try a little side business during COVID, probably at the height, I think like 2021. We had this idea to take our play space ideas, how we design things, and bring them to people's homes. It was called PlayLab Design. And it would have been this business we would have done where we would, part of the team we've had, like besides me and my wife, who had this, child education experience, work with kids on the spectrum, sensory integration disorders. Her sister's a play therapist, so works with a lot of children as well, and loves interior design, interior decoration. So great person to help us. And she helped design PlayLab, the first ones, especially. So we had this idea that we would have a business that would do design for people's homes, go in their places and talk about like, what are your kids into? How do they play? How do you want to organize your space to like help them use it better? And one example I always gave was that, I have a daughter who loves, it's sensory seeker behavior. She loves to move and run and jump and somersault and tumble. She jumps off her bunk bed onto the mattress below. So, future stunt woman or jackass star or something, I don't know. But we made like, we had a bed on the floor, like just a mattress because it was safer for little kids. And we put like a trapeze thing above it, which looked a little bit kinky maybe, but it was just for children, I swear. But it was like, we had like monkey bars and stuff, and they would just love to like, we could hook them up on the ceiling and they could like hang down and like do stuff. And she'd watch TV and doing like aerial splits and crazy things like that. So it was this idea of like how to meet a kid's play needs at your house and what you can do to create a space that works for them. So we did a couple clients, and it was a ton of work. If we'd priced it better and researched it, it might have been more feasible, but it could have been cool to take PlayLab more into people's homes. And we did a lot of research too, like people have enough space in their houses to, devote to this, or how much space they've got, what can we do with the space they do have, or their budgets. So it was kind of a cool way to try and adapt when COVID was at its height to how do we still kind of use our brand, use the power of it, and deliver its thing for customers.
Well, that's very interesting. And I think at the end of the day, what we can say is we don't know for the future yet. Because one thing I would say with you, Jason, is and this is, me making up a statement here that may not be true and placing something upon you, but I think you're always going to be an entrepreneur. I think you might as well face it. You're stuck with that. You're going to be. You've got a strong foundational entrepreneur mindset because you're creative, but and this is what I love, and everybody in the audience can still hear this, Jason's out there, he's creating, he's being really ingenuity on everything, but you're coming back in and you're looking at the financials and you're saying constantly, it's got to make sense. It's got to make financial sense. And it's that relationship between creativity and financial feasibility that will lead to success in whatever you do. Different levels depending on the consumer and what's going on in the world, but it will lead to success. And you have those fundamentals.
And so I got to give props to Carrie too. So can't ignore me, but she definitely had integral part of everything. So yeah, I agree. It's like, before we did the second location, I was working this like e-commerce job. I was an employee somewhere, and it became very hard, honestly, to be an employee somewhere else. And then also running a business on the side, time wise, energy wise, sure. But it's almost just like, it was hard to be an employee somewhere and a boss somewhere else. it just became like but I was like, I'm so over this job. I was like, I just want to do PlayLab and try to run with this and see where it can go. So it'd be hard, I think, to go back to being an employee somewhere if I didn't have to.
I know that because I started my company. It's been so long ago, but it was probably about 23, 24, somewhere about that. And I've had a few times that I was an employee for maybe 6 months or a year here and there on purpose for something I wanted to experience or learn, like being a banker. I think I was a banker for about a year. I wanted that experience. And another one was just moving to a new state. But other than that, I've been self-employed. And you know what? There's just no way I could ever consider even trying to be an employee. I wouldn't even bother trying because it's just not, as we said in the country, it's not my elk. So I get what you're saying. We got a few minutes left. And Jason, any, takeaway that you just want to say, a shout out to the audience, some words of wisdom you'd like to leave with them?
So hard to say.
You said so many, I know.
No, I mean, I was talking someone, it was one of the cool things that we found is people will like write us from across the country, like, oh, how do you do a play space? How do you do what you're doing? Like they, like a consultancy thing almost. I remember like one person was asking me about how do you do it? And she was wanting to do her own business, but she wanted to do it to spend more time with her daughter. Like I think her daughter was 4 years old or something. And it was a small town in California. And I was just like looking at like, well, do your research, like have a business plan, really like know your cost of and who your market's going to be. Give enough people there to support how much you need to make it worth your while. And when it came to like the idea of, spending more time with your kids, like I'm like, I don't know if that's really a goal you'll be able to achieve, honestly. If you're going to start your own business and run it, it might be very difficult for that to happen. You might have more time with your kids if you're just working a 40-hour job as an employee somewhere. So I think really to know what you want out of your business, really know what your goals are, what you hope to get, and don't assume that's going to happen based on, your fantasy of how things will work out. Really make sure that you've done your homework when it comes to your plan, how you'll do it, how much you'll make, how much it'll cost you, and the time and energy it'll take to do what you want to do.
Complete pearls of wisdom. I had several clients came to mind immediately, but I had somebody that was going to start a small store so they could spend more time with their kids. And I said, no, it's not going to work. And now both of them are having to work full time and the store because you have to have realistic goals. So Jason, wonderful, wonderful words of wisdom that you've shared with everybody today. I can't thank you enough. Before we come to a close, I want to answer a question from somebody has in the audience from something I talked about at the very beginning about deadlines. They're asking about a DBA that you started in November of last year. Don't have a lot of information. I'm assuming you're operating as a sole prop with a DBA you started. DBAs just have to be renewed every 5 years. So if it's just specific question to what you have to do to worry about the DBA by itself, you don't have to for 5 years. But as far as whether I'm assuming you're operating as a sole prop, you need to get ready for tax time. And I'll be talking about this as time goes on in the next couple weeks, more and more. But Jason, I wanted to tell you, we've got some great responses in the chat. Wonderful advice. Thank you from Randy, one of our frequent flyers who's also been on the show. It has been so wonderful to speak to you. And I just can't even count the number of wisdom, gems of wisdom that you shared with us. So thank you so much. And we're going to invite you back because this story is never ending. We're kind of on a cliffhanger with you. Is it going to be parties? Is it going to be playtime? Is it going to be designing home play labs? Is it going to be something else? So we're going to come back around and have you come back on to answer the question of what happens next. And I think one of the things that you didn't say the word, but you've demonstrated is being flexible.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time, and it was a great experience. So thank you. Oh, Don, yeah. Hi, Don.
Yes, awesome. And so everybody, one more reminder, you want a unique kids party, you contact Jason. We got his information. Man, if you could bring a horse and karaoke, and you could do anything. So whatever you want to come up with, he's got it. Get in touch with him, book your party. He's getting booked fast. Lauren, going to invite you back to end the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Jason, I'll be in touch. I have a 2.5-year-old.
Perfect.
I would love to bring a pony. He's more into Spider-Man though, so it might be Spider-Man.
Man, you can, if you want, we can do a.
That sounds perfect. See, I told you, Jason, we're going to get you, some people coming in for unique parties. Absolutely.
The answer is yes. So just so you know.
I love it.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to say thank you to everybody, our frequent flyers and the new people that joined our show, and to Jason, and always to Lauren for handling everything so perfectly as you do. I don't know how you pick up the words when I ask you to put them in the chat. So next week, we got another great show. Thank you for tuning in to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. I'll see everybody next week.
Bye, Lori. Thank you. Bye, Jason.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So be sure to let me drop my email in here again. I know our frequent flyers have it, excuse me, but I'm going to drop it in for the newbies. If you would like to get in contact with Lori Williams to set up a meeting to discuss your finances, or, all of the above, quite honestly, she's amazing. Please shoot me an email and I'll get you connected with her. If you are looking for, honestly, any kind of information, just reach out. We'd love to help you. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. We are here, same time, same link, same Zoom channel, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Take care, everyone, and Happy New Year. There is my email. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. All right, everyone, take care.